My girlfriend mocked me in front of her friends, now she's the one begging me. My name is Ethan Rhodes, and the night I became a joke in front of 5 strangers changed everything. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Ethan's Way. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. It started on a rooftop, the kind of rooftop bar that pretends to be effortless, but reeks of curated aesthetic string lights hung just low enough to cast flattering shadows, overpriced cocktails named things like Solar Flare or Midnight Detox, and a DJ spinning soft remixes of Billie Eilish like it was an underground art installation. Harper had invited me. Correction. Harper had announced we were going, and I followed. That's the thing about relationships when they start to tilt. You stop deciding together. One of you becomes the shadow. I had become hers. We arrived late as instructed. Nobody cool shows up on time, she said, checking her lipstick in the Uber's side mirror. Her dress shimmered in bronze, hugging her curves, her hair styled in perfect waves. She looked amazing. People always noticed her when she entered a room. She glowed, confident, charismatic, practiced. She belonged to the kind of world where networking felt like flirting and compliments always had hidden barbs. I didn't belong. Still, I tried. Ethan, this is Vanessa. She runs a PR firm. Harper beamed, barely giving me a second glance. And this is Brent. You know the guy with that viral dog account on TikTok. And this is Alicia. She modeled in Tokyo for a year. And that's... She gestured vaguely toward a tall man in a cream linen suit sipping from a martini glass. That's Ryan. Don't ask what he does. Just know he's connected. I nodded, smiled, gave a polite, hey. Everyone, she added in that tone that meant watch this. This is Ethan, my minimalist boyfriend. Cue laughter. Not cruel, not mocking, not outright, just amused. The kind of laughter that lands softly but cuts sharply when you know the context. Harper always used that phrase, minimalist boyfriend, like it was clever. Like I was a charming character from a Wes Anderson film. Quiet, low maintenance, stylishly dull. The first time she said it, I thought it was cute. This time, in front of these people, it felt like a spotlight and not the good kind. Minimalist. Ryan grinned. So you're the type who lives with like one fork and no TV. I forced a laugh. Something like that. Oh, you should see his workspace. Harper added, voice sugar-coated. It's all cables and sticky notes and those weird Japanese pens he's obsessed with. It's like living with a quiet monk who's building a spaceship. More laughter. Even Vanessa giggled, her wine glass raised like she was toasting the joke. I felt my face go warm, but I smiled, nodded, bit my tongue. That's what I did when I felt cornered. I played along. But something inside me started to harden. Harper wasn't done. She leaned into Alicia and stage whispered, when he makes ramen, he measures the boiling time. To the second. He's cute like that. I looked at her. She didn't look back. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't a partner in her story. I was a feature, a quirky side character she dragged out for laughs and aesthetic value. The thing about Harper is she doesn't hate people. She just categorizes them. You're either useful, impressive, or forgettable. I had started as impressive, the thoughtful guy with deep opinions and a stable soul. But now I had slipped into the forgettable but safe category. And that to her meant disposable. I stood there, drink in hand, swirling melted ice cubes, and listened to her laugh without me. It wasn't anger I felt. Not yet. It was detachment, the beginning of clarity. Later that night, the group posed for photos. Harper stood in the center, one hand on her hip, the other wrapped around Vanessa's waist. She tilted her chin just right, glancing sideways. Mouth slightly parted, she knew her angles. I was in one of the shots, tucked awkwardly to the side like an assistant who wandered into frame. She didn't even tag me when she posted it. When we got home, I was still quiet. I watched her take off her earrings, hum to herself as she slipped off her heels, scroll through the pictures on her phone. I sat on the edge of the couch, still wearing the button-down she had picked for me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask what I thought of the night. She just muttered something about how Ryan was actually cooler than he looked online and disappeared into the bathroom. That's when I made the decision. Not a loud one. Not a storming out suitcase packed in the night kind of decision. No, my decision was internal, quiet, precise, like a surgeon marking the first incision. I wasn't going to fight for space in someone's world where I'd already been written out of the script. I wasn't going to be the man she tolerated just enough to avoid being alone. I was done waiting for her to see my worth. That night, while she slept soundly beside me, her breath steady, her face turned away, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "You made me invisible, but I'm going to make sure you notice me again. Not with begging, not with drama, with silence, with success, with a transformation she wouldn't see coming." And when she finally looked again, it wouldn't be to see the man she used to mock. It would be to realize that she lost him. I was never enough for her. They say relationships don't break in a moment, they erode, like salt water slowly eating through steel. That rooftop night wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment I finally noticed I was standing on rust. Looking back, the signs were always there. When Harper and I first started dating, she used to look at me like I was the smartest man in the room. She told her friends I was brilliant in a quiet way. I was the guy who didn't chase attention, who could fix her Wi-Fi in 5 seconds flat and actually listen when she spoke about her dreams. I used to walk her home from art exhibits even when it rained. She liked that I wasn't flashy, that I was real. But somewhere along the line, real stopped being enough. I think it happened gradually, like most betrayals do, not loud or obvious. It was in the way she started critiquing my t-shirts, the way she wrinkled her nose when I ordered drip coffee instead of oat milk lattes, the way she sighed when I said I couldn't make it to some influencer brunch because I had client deadlines. "Sometimes you make life feel so beige," she once said, her fingers scrolling her phone as if the sentence didn't sting. I laughed it off, thought maybe I was being sensitive, thought maybe she was right. That was the problem. When you love someone like Harper, you start second-guessing your instincts. You convince yourself their sharper edges are just ambition, that their criticism is a form of love, that if you just improved a little, they'd come back to you fully. But love doesn't ask you to upgrade your soul just to stay relevant. One day, I overheard her on the phone with Vanessa. They didn't know I'd come home early. I paused at the doorway to our apartment, hearing Harper's voice through the slightly ajar bedroom door. "No, he's not bad or anything," she said. "He's just, I don't know, safe, predictable, like those old sitcoms you put on in the background while doing laundry." There was a pause, then laughter. "Vanessa's, I think." "Exactly," Harper added. "He's comfort, but I need excitement, you know." I didn't step in. I didn't slam the door. I just stood there, keys still in my hand, letting her words settle like a weight in my chest. Safe, predictable, background noise. It's wild how someone can reduce you to wallpaper after once calling you home. I kept asking myself, when did she start seeing me as less? Was it when she got promoted to head content strategist, when she got her first 1,000 followers on that photojournal blog? Or was it when I left the security of my agency job to freelance? Was it the lack of a title? The freedom she secretly resented? She never said it outright, but there were moments, so many, when she would glance at me across the room, like I wasn't evolving fast enough to keep up with her new orbit. And I tried. God, I tried. I took her to gallery openings. I bought cologne I couldn't pronounce because she mentioned liking it on another guy. I forced myself to enjoy cocktails I hated, nodded through conversations with her PR circle, laughed at inside jokes I wasn't part of. But no matter how much I bent, I never seemed to fit her shape. It hit me hardest one night when we went to a pop-up event in a warehouse turned art space. Harper wore this red backless dress, the kind that made people turn when she walked by. She lit up the room like a flashbulb. I trailed behind her as she moved from group to group, smiling, laughing, capturing content for her stories. At one point, I watched her pose for a picture with a guy named Logan, an ex from her college days apparently. He was tall, wore designer boots, and had one of those overconfident grins. I stood beside the display case unnoticed. When she finally looked over, she waved me toward her like someone calling for their Uber. Not with joy, not with warmth, with necessity. I smiled, but inside I was already gone. That night, I lay beside her in bed while she edited reels and answered DMs. I watched her face glow under the screen's light. She didn't once turn toward me, didn't touch me, didn't ask how I was. And I realized something cold but necessary. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her placeholder, a name on the lease, a warm body in the sheets, someone who still did the dishes and refilled the Brita filter and paid half the rent, but not someone she saw. When people talk about falling out of love, they imagine shouting matches or cheating or slamming doors. But the real heartbreak is quieter. It's the night she forgets to ask how your presentation went. It's the text she never sends because your thoughts don't matter anymore. It's the day you realize she's laughing more with strangers than she ever does with you. And still, I stayed, because I thought maybe she'd remember what we had, because I hoped, because I feared the silence more than the sting. But after that rooftop party, something shifted. My silence stopped being passive. It became a boundary. I stopped waiting for her attention. I stopped trying to impress her. I started doing things for me, not for her approval. I began rising earlier, running before sunrise, clearing my mind. I picked up new projects, focused on freelance, rebuilt my portfolio, reached out to former clients, took courses online. I found rhythm in the grind. I didn't tell her. She didn't ask. She was too busy with brunches and collabs and late-night edits of her latest haul videos. And while she drifted further into her curated world, I began carving a new one for myself, one where I wasn't mocked, where I didn't have to audition for relevance. One night, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, or rather I was watching, and she was live tweeting. A character on screen said, "You never realize how heavy invisibility feels until someone finally sees you again." And I remember thinking, I'm done waiting to be seen. That was the night I finally smiled for real. Not because of her, but because I knew something she didn't. I was coming back, and when I did, it wouldn't be to prove anything to her. It would be to remind myself that I was never the background. I was the whole damn picture. People say you should trust someone by what they do when no one's watching. But I say trust what they do when they think you're not paying attention. It was about a week after the rooftop humiliation. Harper hadn't brought it up once. No apology. No "hey, did that bother you?" Just more of the same iced matches calendar reminders. Press kits spread across our shared kitchen table, like she was too busy chasing her future to look back at me. She thought I was fine. I let her think that. We were like actors in the same play reciting different scripts. She was still in performance mode, filters, outfits, captions, camera angles. I was in rehearsal for an exit. That night, she was sprawled on the couch, feet tucked under a throw blanket phone angled perfectly to avoid the double chin she feared but never had. I was behind her at the desk in the corner, headphones on, pretending to work on a client's UI overhaul. I wasn't working. I was watching her. She scrolled through group messages, typed fast, laughed under her breath. Then I heard my name. My stomach did that thing tightened like a fist. I paused. My music leaned back slightly, quietly. She didn't notice. She was too busy voice noting her best friend. "God, Ethan's been in this weird headspace lately," she said with a trace of faux concern. "He's so in his head lately. Like, you know when someone thinks too deeply about things that don't matter." Pause. A soft chuckle. "I mean, I still love him, I guess, but love him like you love a favorite hoodie. Cozy, familiar, not something you'd wear to impress anyone." Another laugh. "God, I sound awful." And then dead silence. She didn't take it back. Didn't say, "Just kidding." Didn't say, "Don't tell anyone I said that." Just tapped her phone and moved on to Instagram. I sat there, frozen. Her words didn't cut deep because they were shocking. They cut deep because they were true. Not about me, about her. That was the night I understood something with absolute clarity. She didn't love me. She loved the space I filled. The warmth, the reliability, the errands, the tech support, the ability to be alone without being alone. I was convenient. But convenience isn't connection. It's not respect. And it's sure as hell not love. I stood up from the desk, walked silently to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water just to give my hands something to do. She glanced up and smiled faintly. "You still working?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, taking a slow sip. "Don't stay up too late," she replied. "We're supposed to go to that pop-up brunch tomorrow." Right, the brunch. Her friend's rooftop launch for a line of eco-linen jumpsuits. Another morning of shallow chatter and filtered selfies. Another event where I'd hold the phone and pretend I wasn't just part of the frame. "Sure," I said, "I'll set my alarm." And I did, but not for brunch. I woke up early before sunrise, walked the neighborhood, no music, just wind and gravel and the hum of the city waking up. I ended up at a bench near the old bookstore we used to visit when we first moved in together. Back when she'd hold my hand like it was something sacred. Now, she barely touched me unless someone was watching. I sat there and asked myself the hardest question. Why did I let it get this far? I had become the kind of man I used to pity, quietly shrinking to fit a life that wasn't designed for him. Harper hadn't changed overnight. She'd always been intense, ambitious, image-aware, but I had changed. I had dulled my edges to keep her comfortable, smoothed my voice, compromised my time, silenced my instincts. And what did it get me? Mockery, dismissal, emptiness. The truth was, it wasn't about getting her back, or making her love me again. It was about getting myself back. Later that day, while she was in the shower, I found myself staring at her phone on the bed. It was unlocked, Face ID still active, her DMs open. I didn't mean to look, but I did. And what I saw wasn't cheating, wasn't scandal. It was worse. It was indifference. Conversations with friends about weekend plans, none included me. Jokes about how Ethan's probably still reading productivity blogs. A meme of a cardboard cutout with the caption, "My emotional support boyfriend," sent with a laughing emoji. More laughter. More all poor thing comments. More diminishing. And I realized I had become a ghost in my own life. The good guy she knew would never say a word, would never confront, would never raise his voice. But the man I was becoming, he wasn't going to be a silent witness anymore. That evening, I sat across from her at dinner. She made pasta, added too much lemon as usual. She talked about a potential brand collab and how she just needs one viral reel to hit 6 figures. I stirred my food, slowly watching her. And when she asked, "What's that face?" I said it plainly. "You make fun of me when I'm not around." She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "What? You talk about me like I'm some project you regret starting." She blinked. Slowly. "Where is this coming from?" "I've been listening," I said. "You think I'm predictable. You tell people I'm safe, boring." "That's not fair," she said, her voice suddenly cold. "People joke. That's just how I talk. You know I don't mean it like that." "Yeah," I said, "I know exactly how you mean it." Silence. Between us. Not hostile, not loud. Just real. Raw. She got up, muttered something about me being dramatic, and walked out of the room. I sat there for a while, letting the truth settle into my bones like winter air. That night, I didn't pack a bag, didn't shout, didn't slam a door. I just went to sleep knowing this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And whether she saw it coming or not, the man she'd belittled in whispers was about to become the man she'd remember in silence. Ending line as requested. If you were in this situation, would you forgive or take revenge? Comment below to let us know. You don't have to disappear to be gone. That's something I learned in the weeks that followed that quiet dinner. I didn't leave Harper, not physically. I still slept in the same bed, still poured her oat milk, still picked up paper towels on the way home. But something inside me had already stepped outside the relationship and closed the door. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to make a scene. I just stopped showing up emotionally. And here's the wild part she didn't notice. Not really. She noticed the basics. That I didn't laugh as much, that I didn't initiate conversations, that I started wearing headphones even when I wasn't listening to anything. She'd wave her hand in front of me, smirk, and say "Earth" to Ethan. I'd smile, nod, go back to my laptop. Inside, I was building something far more powerful than a silent treatment. I was building my escape velocity. I dove into work. Not the passive grind for rent work I'd been coasting through. I got intentional. I took on bigger freelance contracts, updated my portfolio, got serious about networking. I redid my LinkedIn, built a personal brand site, even began applying for contracts with international firms. Harper never asked about any of it. She was too focused on growing her own image, filming reels in 3 outfits a day, editing photos for hours, juggling hashtags like they were high art. I admired her drive once. Now I saw it for what it was: endless performance-curated applause. Meanwhile, I had found something she didn't expect: momentum. Each client I signed gave me energy. Each finished project gave me leverage. I started waking up earlier, working out, meditating, reading again. My screen time dropped. My confidence didn't shout, it settled. And still, she didn't see it. She thought my silence meant stagnation. She didn't realize it meant strategy. We became like polite roommates. She'd kiss me on the cheek out of habit. I'd ask if she needed almond milk while grocery shopping. She started going out more: solo events, influencer dinners, collaborations. And when she came back, she'd talk about other people with a glow in her eyes that I hadn't seen when she talked about me in months. One night, while she got ready for some rooftop wine tasting, she came out of the bedroom in this deep green wrap dress, stunning honestly, and twirled in front of the mirror. "Too much?" she asked, adjusting the hem. "Not enough," I replied quietly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You always say that." But that night, I didn't just say it. I meant it. Not because I wanted her to impress someone else, but because for the first time, I was observing her with detachment. Not love, not resentment, just clarity. She was still trying to be seen by people she'd just met, by brands that didn't care. Meanwhile, she had already lost the one person who used to see her fully without all that noise. But she didn't know she'd lost me. Not yet. And honestly, that was the most powerful thing I carried. She thought I was still on the leash, still orbiting her, still waiting. I wasn't. I had already unhooked myself and floated into my own atmosphere. One night, she left her laptop open while she showered. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally, but the screen lit up with a message from a friend of hers, Jamie. So is Ethan still, there? Harper's response made my stomach drop and twist all at once. Yeah, lol. He's still in the background, like a safe app you never delete. The background. That word again. That night I didn't cry. I didn't confront. I just stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, and said it out loud. You don't belong in the background. From that moment forward, everything sharpened. I began planning the next move, not just a career leap, but a personal reinvention. I started looking at apartments, small ones, quiet ones with natural light and a place for plants. I spoke to a career coach, took a course in negotiation, started saving receipts for a clean financial break. Every moment she thought I was scrolling memes, beside her on the couch, I was carving a new path. I became a ghost, still in her home, but no longer hers. She noticed in small ways. You've been distant, she said once while folding laundry. Have I replied. Yeah, I don't know, you just feel far away. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I saw her confusion as genuine. Not manipulative, not performative. She didn't understand what was happening because she never believed I had it in me to leave emotionally before I left physically. People like Harper count on silence meaning submission. But sometimes silence is the sound of strategy. She leaned over and touched my arm. Are we okay? I looked at her, not through her, at her, and I said, do you think we are? She hesitated. That hesitation said more than any answer. I nodded. That's what I thought. Later that night, she tried to be extra sweet, made my favorite tea, wore that hoodie she used to wear back when we were happy. She sat next to me on the couch and looped her arm through mine. But it wasn't real. It wasn't repair. It was reaction. And it was too late. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean in either. And in that little space between us, that inch of untouched air, lived all the words I no longer needed to say. I had ghosted her heart, and she had no idea yet that soon I'd be gone for good. They say when you finally stop chasing the wrong thing, the right thing finds you. For me, it came in the form of a LinkedIn message. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Harper was on the balcony filming an unboxing of some skincare brand she barely used. I was inside at the kitchen counter coding a prototype for a small freelance gig, headphones on, but my focus was fractured. Not because of her voice, I'd tuned that out long ago, but because I could feel something coming. It had been weeks since I emotionally stepped out of the relationship. My work was growing my confidence steadier, but I still hadn't taken that last step, the leap that says I trust myself to rebuild without this person beside me. And then ding, a notification. I clicked expecting spam, but it wasn't. It was a message from a creative director at a fast-scaling fintech startup in Seattle. She'd seen some of my design work on a portfolio form I'd forgotten I even uploaded to. They were building a product aimed at simplifying personal finance for young professionals, and they needed someone to design the entire user experience from scratch. Are you available for contract or project-based work, she wrote. I reread it 5 times. Then I opened the attachment she'd sent, a breakdown of the vision scope compensation. Let's just say it was significant, more than I'd ever earned at once, and with room to grow. My heart was thumping, but not out of fear. This was it. This was the exit door I'd been quietly searching for. But here's the part Harper would never understand. I didn't gloat. I didn't run out and buy flashy clothes. I didn't even mention it to her. Because it wasn't about her. It was about me proving to myself that I wasn't the joke she and her friends painted me to be. For the next 2 weeks, I worked like a man possessed. I got up at 5 a.m. before the sun, before the city noise, and I built wireframes, flowcharts, interactive models. I designed late into the night with lo-fi beats in my ears and clarity in my chest. Harper noticed I was busy, but not what I was building. She asked once in that breezy way she does, "You working on something new?" I looked up, expression blank. "Yeah." "Oh," she said, distracted by her phone. "Cool." That was it. No curiosity, no follow-up, no real interest. I realized then how little she ever asked about my work, unless it was to mock it. And yet, here I was designing an app that could change lives while she made videos about face serum and crystal-infused water bottles. One morning, the startup offered me a permanent remote position with equity. No more scraping for projects. No more wondering if I'd make rent. This was stability, power, freedom. And once again, I said nothing to Harper. Not because I was being secretive, but because she'd stopped deserving front row seats to my growth the moment she started clapping for everyone else but me. A few nights later, we went to dinner with her friends and other influencer circle, all curated aesthetics and passive-aggressive compliments. I wore a black button-down. She didn't comment. At the table, the conversation drifted to making moves and next steps. Vanessa, the one who always laughed a little too hard at Harper's jokes, leaned in and said, "So Ethan's still freelancing from the corner of your apartment?" I smiled slowly. "Actually, I said I'm in talks with a fintech group out west. We're finalizing a product I'm leading UX on. It's scaling fast." They blinked. Silence. Even Harper's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "Oh," Vanessa said, tilting her head. "That's big." Harper laughed a little too loudly. "You didn't tell me that." "You didn't ask," I replied calmly, looking straight at her. A flicker of something passed across her face. Not anger, not jealousy. Something more dangerous to someone like Harper. Realization. The kind that sets in slowly like a fever. The dinner continued, but she wasn't as loud. She didn't interrupt as much. She clung to her glass like a lifeline. And when we got home, she didn't speak. She watched me as I changed out of my shirt. And for the first time in a long time, she really looked at me. "You didn't tell me about the job," she said, quieter now. "No," I said, "I didn't." "Why not?" I turned to face her. "Do you actually want to know? Or do you just not like being left out of the loop?" She flinched. That small, involuntary twitch of someone who just got cut with the truth. "I want to know," she said. I studied her. Not the makeup, not the outfit, just the eyes. And for a moment I saw it, that thin crack in her armor. "You stopped seeing me a long time ago, Harper," I said. "Somewhere between your collabs and filters I became background noise. I stopped talking about things that mattered because you stopped listening." She didn't deny it, didn't deflect, just whispered I didn't know. "You didn't care to." That night we didn't argue, we didn't cry. She just curled up in bed facing the wall, and I sat at my desk with a mug of tea watching the cursor blink on a final mock-up screen. My inbox dinged again. The contract was ready to sign. I clicked, digitally signed my name. And with that click I sealed the next chapter. Not revenge, not escape, but rebirth. Because when someone reduces you to a joke, the best response isn't to fight. It's to become the punchline they'll regret ever telling. There's a specific kind of silence you learn to live in when you're being emotionally phased out. Not by a stranger, by someone who once said they loved you. Harper didn't break up with me. She just started replacing me piece by piece. It began with her phone always turned face down, always on silent, her laughter at texts she never showed me. Just Vanessa, she'd say, or you wouldn't care, it's influencer stuff. I cared, but not about the texts. I cared about what she was slowly withdrawing: attention, presence, softness, the things that used to cost her nothing when we were still close. Now I had to earn them, and I wasn't playing anymore. That's when I first noticed his name, Joel. I didn't need to dig. She mentioned him once in passing, a friend of a friend. He'd been showing up in her stories, more often tagged in the background. At first I thought I was being paranoid, but then I saw the way she lit up when his name popped up on her screen. She didn't delete messages, she just started acting like I didn't matter enough to hide anything anymore. The emotional distance between us wasn't accidental. It was designed, intentional. I remember one night in particular. She was getting dressed for some networking event, a blazer, crop top, heels that I hadn't seen her wear in months. Perfume, winged eyeliner, that slight extra layer of effort she only used when she wanted to impress someone new. "You look serious tonight," I said. She smiled, but not at me. "It's a serious crowd." I asked her who would be there. She gave me a list. Joel's name wasn't on it. But I knew. She knew I knew. We just didn't say it out loud. That night I stayed home and worked. Not out of resentment, I genuinely had deliverables to finish. Copia had started scaling, and my role was becoming more critical by the week. I was knee-deep in a design sprint when her message came in. "Running late. Don't wait up." I didn't reply. I didn't wait up. At 12:37 a.m., the door opened. She moved quietly, as if still playing the role of someone with nothing to hide. "Hey," she said softly, slipping her heels off. "You're still awake? I was working." She nodded, glanced at the screen, then went to brush her teeth like we were still two people sharing a life. I sat in that chair and thought, this woman is already gone. Not physically, not legally, but emotionally. She had exited long ago. Over the next few days, I said nothing. Not because I was bottling rage, because I was watching. Harper started talking more about what people want in a relationship these days, Not like she was including me in that conversation, but like she was preemptively justifying a shift she hadn't admitted to. She brought up Joel in conversations now, lightly, strategically. "Oh, Joel mentioned that app you're working on, said it's trending in his circle." That's when I knew for sure she was comparing us. Out loud, waiting to see if I'd break. I didn't. Instead, I leaned back, smiled politely, and said, "Maybe Joel should try applying there. Sounds like he needs direction." She blinked. The jab landed. Not cruel, but sharp enough to make her realize I wasn't oblivious. I was just choosing not to give her the reaction she craved. You see, some people don't cheat with bodies, they cheat with attention, with the gaze, with laughter, with silence where there used to be love. And Harper was already giving pieces of herself to someone else, maybe not physically yet, but in all the ways that count. What she didn't know was that I had already started moving on too, not with someone else, with myself. I was no longer trying to save us. I was investing everything into the future I was building solo. Copia had just hinted at a long-term contract offer. I'd been invited to speak on a virtual design panel. Even my old mentor had messaged me saying, "You've changed." In a good way. I was becoming the man I had forgotten I could be. And every time Harper came home late, every time she dropped Joel's name with that sideways glance, every time she looked at me to see if I'd crack, I just smiled. Because when someone tries to replace you and fails to find better, that silence becomes your revenge. There was no grand fight, no screaming match, no thrown plates or storming exits. When I left Harper, I did it the same way she left me gradually. But where she slipped away with distraction and silence, I walked out with clarity. It was a Sunday morning. Light streamed through the windows of our apartment, catching on the steam rising from her espresso. She sat cross-legged on the couch in a robe, scrolling her phone like she always did. Across from her, I sat with a notebook, pretending to plan the week ahead. But I already knew how this day would end. I had rehearsed it, not the words, but the intention. I waited until she looked up. "You've been quiet lately," she said, "even more than usual." I nodded. "I've been thinking about us." Her body stiffened slightly. She didn't say anything. I set the notebook down, folded my hands. "I'm leaving." She blinked. "What do you mean I mean this place, this relationship, all of it?" The silence between us grew dense like fog that wouldn't lift. She half laughed, nervous, not amused. "You're being dramatic." I stayed still, calm. "This isn't drama," I said. "This is long overdue." Now her voice rose just slightly. "Wait, what? Because of Joel?" "That's ridiculous. I didn't do anything. This isn't about Joel." I said, though. "Of course, it partly was. This is about how you've treated me for the past year, like I'm furniture, like I'm a placeholder until something shinier comes along." She scoffed, eyes flashing. "That's not fair. It's accurate." I wasn't shouting. I wasn't even angry. But something in my voice, the stillness of it, made her go quiet. "I stayed," I said, through the eye rolls, the passive-aggressive jokes, the way you talked about me when you thought I wasn't listening. "I stayed through the parties where you made me feel like an accessory. Through the nights you forgot I had needs, too." She looked stunned, like someone who expected the storm to arrive, but never imagined it would be this silent. "Why now?" she asked, voice smaller. "Because I finally remembered what it feels like to respect myself." Her hands tightened in her lap. "So you're just done?" "I was done months ago," I said. "I just didn't admit it out loud." She shook her head slowly. "I don't want this to be over, but you've been acting like it's over for a long time." Tears rimmed her eyes. "I thought we'd figure it out. You can't fix something you keep mocking." She looked away. I stood, walked to the closet, grabbed the bag I'd packed the night before. Just the essentials. Laptop, clothes, chargers. I wasn't making a scene. I was making a decision. She followed me to the door. "Can we at least talk again later?" she asked. "Just not like this. Not so final." I turned. "There's nothing left to say, Harper. You had all the chances to hear me, and you didn't want to." Now her voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd ever leave. That was the moment. Right there. Because that's the mistake people like her make. They think quiet people stay forever. They think the ones who don't yell are too weak to walk away. But silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's strength." I opened the door, took one last look at the apartment where we'd built something that could have been real, but wasn't. "Take care of yourself," I said. Then I left. Out on the street, I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel sad. I felt weightless, like someone had finally stopped holding me underwater. I booked a week at a short-term rental across town. Brick walls, clean space, no scent of her perfume, no trace of her laughter echoing in the walls. That night, I slept with my windows open and a clear conscience. She texted the next day. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't reply, because I was no longer living for her readiness. I was living for mine. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like waking up in a bed that didn't carry her perfume. No noise, no tension curled beneath the blankets. Just quiet, the kind that settles deep in your chest when you're no longer pretending everything is okay. My new place was smaller, cleaner. Exposed brick, one big window, no unnecessary clutter. I didn't even bring the art we bought together. It wasn't mine, not really. Everything here was intentional. It was mine. I started waking up earlier, no more dragging my body through a relationship that drained me. Now I got up at 6, brewed strong coffee, and walked around the block while the city yawned to life. It wasn't some Instagrammable self-care routine. I didn't post any of it. It was for me. Because I'd spent years being watched, observed, judged, weighed for style points. I didn't need anyone's applause anymore. Copia was growing fast. We'd just passed 20,000 active users. My design framework was getting attention in tech circles I used to admire from a distance. Now they were DMing me asking for insight, collaboration, mentorship. No one at those events cared what kind of hoodie I wore. No one rolled their eyes when I talked about user empathy or accessibility design. They listened, and I spoke, freely. One evening, I got a notification. Copia had been featured on a mid-sized design blog, a profile piece about our product, our process, and the quiet innovation behind it. My name was mentioned, twice. Harper would have lost her mind seeing her name in print like that. But me, I just smiled, copied the link, sent it to my team, and got back to work. I didn't even think of showing her, but she found it anyway. 2 days later, she messaged me, saw the Copia article. You really did it. No question, just a statement, short, heavy. I didn't reply. That wasn't cruelty, that was closure. Growth is loud to the people who expect you to stay small. To me, it was just normal now. I cooked my own meals, started reading again, reconnected with a few people I'd lost touch with during my Harper years, friends who'd subtly disappeared because they saw the way I was being treated and didn't want to say the wrong thing. One of them, Dev, said it best. You're lighter now, he told me over drinks one night, like you're back in your own skin. I didn't realize how far I drifted from myself until I stood there, hearing those words. I nodded quietly, grateful. He raised a glass. To getting out before she broke you completely. I raised mine too, to remembering who I was before I forgot. It's strange how silence fills your life after leaving someone who always needed attention. I didn't miss the noise. I missed the idea of love, maybe the comfort of a body nearby the sound of someone humming in the kitchen. But not her. Not the woman who mocked me in whispers and saw me as aesthetic convenience. The grief had passed. Now, there was only direction. I bought a new pair of shoes. Nothing fancy, just simple, clean leather. I'd worn the same beat-up sneakers for years, mostly because Harper used to make fun of my dad's shoe style. I never argued, but I remembered. Slipping into those new shoes, I realized I wasn't dressing to avoid comments anymore. I was dressing for me. That night, I passed by a bar we once frequented. Inside, people were laughing loudly, clinking glasses. A girl with long hair posed for her friend's phone, back-arched smile fixed. It reminded me of Harper, and how often I held the phone, captured the moment, stood behind the lens while she collected approval. Now, no one was looking at me, and I didn't need them to, because the most freeing realization is that the love you give yourself doesn't need an audience. It started small. Hey stranger, 2 words, 1 emoji, but I knew exactly what it meant. It wasn't really a hello, it was a test, a tap on the glass to see if I'd still swim to the surface. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She was reaching out because she realized I wasn't orbiting her anymore. I didn't reply. I stared at the message for 5 seconds, locked my phone, and went back to work. Copia had just launched a new feature. The feedback was strong. Lillian wanted me to co-host a product panel the following month. My calendar was full. My mind was clear. I wasn't living in her shadow anymore. And the longer I said nothing, the more she noticed. The next message came 2 days later. I read that article about Copia. You really made it. I mean that. Still soft, still polite, still fishing. But it wasn't admiration. It was realization. I didn't reply to that one either. That's the thing about silence. It's not absence, it's control. And she had lost hers. After a week of silence, she sent a third message. Do you ever think about us? I did. But not the way she hoped. I thought about the nights I waited for her to get off her phone so we could have a real conversation. The way she laughed louder at Joel's jokes. The look in her eyes when I told her about my work and she barely blinked. I remembered what it felt like to be alone while sitting 3 feet from someone I loved. But miss it, no. I had grieved that version of us already. Now I was standing in the aftermath and thriving. A few days later she called. Not a text, not a voice note, a full call. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Hey, I don't really know what to say. I've been thinking about everything. You, me, how I left things. I know you're probably over it, over me, but if you ever want to talk, I'd like to. She didn't cry. She didn't beg, but her voice trembled just enough for me to hear it. She was unraveling, not because she missed the relationship, but because she finally saw what she couldn't have anymore. One evening, I was walking back from a cafe when I got a longer message. I didn't appreciate you, not the way I should have. I confused your quiet strength for passivity, your loyalty for convenience. And I told myself you'd always be there until you weren't. And now, I don't know how to fill the space you left. That one stopped me. Not because it hurt, but because it was finally honest. Still, I didn't answer. She was talking to a version of me that no longer existed. The man she laughed at during parties, the man who smiled through insults, the man who held the phone and dimmed his own light so she could shine. That man wasn't reading her messages anymore. I was, and I'd outgrown her. The next time she reached out, it was after I posted a photo. Just a simple one, me and a few colleagues after the panel. Nothing flashy, just me smiling, confident, relaxed. She commented, "You look happy. I'm glad. I didn't delete it. I didn't like it either. I let it sit." Because that's what happens when someone finally sees you standing in your own light, they squint. They try to speak to the version they remember, but all that's left is a silhouette of someone they once knew and never truly valued. Harper used to mock my ambition. Now she was watching it bloom without her. And that's the part they never prepare for, not the loneliness, the regret. I didn't know she'd be there. The invite came from a former client turned investor, a rooftop mixer in the city, mostly startup founders, creatives, and product leads. Not Harper's crowd, at least not anymore. I went with no expectations, no thoughts of the past, just a clean shirt, polished shoes, and a clear head. The elevator opened to a warm-lit rooftop, framed by string lights and the low hum of music. Conversations floated in the air. I'd barely made it to the first circle of handshakes before someone recognized me from Copia's feature on product strategy. We talked, laughed, exchanged cards. I was fully in my element, no longer the quiet boyfriend standing in the corner, no longer someone else's afterthought. And then from across the terrace, I felt it. Eyes on me. I turned. Harper. She was standing near the bar, a glass of wine in hand, talking to Vanessa. Her hair was curled just enough her lipstick bowled her dress like a calculated afterthought. She looked like herself, the version of her that always knew how to be seen. Except this time, she wasn't the center of attention. I was. Our eyes met. She didn't smile. Neither did I. Not out of spite, just recognition. We'd reversed roles completely, and we both knew it. For the first time, I didn't feel that pull in my chest. No nervousness, no longing, just distance, not physical, emotional. She walked over a few minutes later, moving slowly like she was still deciding whether to commit to it. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She gave a small smile. "I didn't know you'd be here. Didn't know you would either." She looked me over. I knew what she saw, not just a different outfit, but a different man. I wasn't dressed up for her. I wasn't performing. I was just present. "You look good," she said softly. "Thanks." Another pause, this one longer. "You're really doing it." "Huh? This whole new life?" I nodded. "It's not new, it's just mine now." She lowered her eyes. "I read about your launch. I watched your panel talk. You were different." "I am." She looked away. Then, without warning, "Do you hate me?" "No," I said quickly, "not even close." She exhaled. Then why won't you answer my messages? Because you weren't messaging me, I said calmly. You were messaging the version of me who waited around for you to care. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I continued, you want closure, maybe even redemption, but I'm not in that chapter anymore. I was wrong, she said, her voice cracking. I couldn't see what you were becoming. No, I replied. You saw it. You just didn't think I'd become it without you. That hit her hard. She nodded, swallowing the moment like a bitter pill. I still think about you. I think about you too, I said, but I don't want to go back there. I'd do it differently this time. I wouldn't, I said quietly, because then I wouldn't be here. And I like who I am now. She didn't cry, but she didn't smile either. She stood there quietly absorbing the moment, knowing that the man standing before her wasn't hers anymore, was never hers to shape. He had shaped himself. Later that night, as I left the rooftop and stepped into the cool night air, I realized something important. She hadn't come to ruin the night. She hadn't come to win me back. She came to confirm what she feared most, that I didn't need her anymore. And what she saw was a man who finally learned how to need himself. It was 2 days after the party, a knock on my door, not a text, not a call, an actual knock. I opened it slowly, not expecting anyone, and there she was. Harper, no eyeliner, no heels, no curated presence, just her. A little pale hair, tied back hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands like she didn't know where else to put her regret. Hi, she said, voice barely audible. I stepped aside. She entered without asking, like she'd done it 100 times before. But this time it felt different, like she knew she didn't belong here anymore, but hoped maybe she could. She sat on the couch, the same spot I used to sit in while she ignored me. I know I probably shouldn't be here, she said, but if I didn't do this face to face, I'd regret it. I didn't say anything, not out of cruelty. I just wanted to let her speak first for once without interruption. I've been thinking about what you said at the rooftop, she continued, about me seeing you and choosing not to care, about how I laughed while you were shrinking. She looked down. You were right, all of it. Silence. Then I hurt you. I minimized you. I turned your love into background noise. I stayed still, letting her talk, letting her feel the weight she used to hand off to me. I know I've said sorry, she added, in messages, in ways that probably didn't sound like they mattered. But this time, I want you to hear it without expecting anything in return. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't cry yet. I thought I wanted flash, excitement, something that looked like a life worth filming. But what I really needed was the stability I never learned to respect. She looked up. You gave me that, and I didn't see the value in it until I watched someone else see you for what you really are. There it was. She finally realized that she'd been treating gold like gravel. I want another chance, she said, voice shaking. Not because I'm lonely, not because I miss the comfort, but because I finally see it now. You weren't boring, you were strong, quietly, patiently, unshakably strong. Still I didn't speak, not because I didn't care, because I did, but caring didn't mean returning. She leaned forward. Would you ever consider it us, I mean, if I did it right this time? That's when I finally exhaled, and said, gently, no. Her face collapsed not in anger, but in grief. Why, she whispered, you still care. I know you do. I do, I said, but caring isn't enough to rebuild what's already burned. I cared while you chipped away at me. I cared while you laughed with other people about the man you said you loved. I cared through silence, through distance, through being invisible in my own relationship. I stood, slowly, calmly, and I finally learned that the version of me who stayed through all that doesn't exist anymore. She swallowed hard. I would love the man you are now, but that man I said was born because you didn't. She looked down again. So this is goodbye. I nodded. This is peace. We stood there for a moment, no yelling, no bitterness, just two people finally honest with each other. She walked to the door, then turned. I hope someone sees you the way I should have. I already do, I said. After she left, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean, like I'd rinsed off the last layer of dust she left behind. I looked around my apartment, the books I chose, the designs I'd mapped, the stillness of my life now quiet but full. I had wanted that apology once, desperately, but by the time it came, I didn't need it. Because healing isn't when they say sorry, it's when you stop needing them to. Healing didn't feel like some grand moment. It wasn't a sunrise epiphany or a thunderclap of emotion. It was the quiet, the way I no longer checked my phone expecting her name, the way I passed old places and didn't flinch, the way I could say her name in my head and feel nothing but a soft, distant respect, not pain, not longing, just quiet. That's how I knew it was over, not just with her, but with a part of me that allowed that version of love to exist. I think the hardest part about walking away is that no one ever sees the 1,000 small cuts that led to it. They only see the moment you stand up. They don't see the nights you felt invisible, the parties where you were present but uninvited, the way your heart shrunk just to fit in their version of you. They see the final scene, not the erosion. But you know, and in time, that's all that matters. Some days I wonder what would have happened if Harper had chosen differently, if she had reached for me instead of her phone, if she had valued the man who sat with her through hard nights and career pivots and self-doubt. But then I remind myself, if she had treated me right, I never would have become the man I am now. And that's the gift buried inside the pain. Not revenge, not proving a point, just evolution. These days, my life is quieter, but it's not empty. I've built a circle of people who speak without performance. I've created work that matters not because it trends, but because it helps. I've learned to enjoy my own company, and not in the lonely filler kind of way, but in the present, peaceful kind of way. And when I meet someone new, I don't fear shrinking again, because I've built boundaries where I used to build excuses. I know the signs now, and I listen to them. That's the gift of heartbreak. It forces you to listen to yourself again. I tell this story not because I want sympathy, not even because I want applause, but because I know someone listening right now feels small in their relationship, feels invisible, feels mocked, and is really trying to make it work even when their soul knows it's already over. If that's you, hear this. You are not background noise. You are not just a good listener or a convenient presence or someone to come home to after they've been entertained by others. You are not boring because you're steady. You are not weak because you don't shout. You are not disposable because you don't perform. The right person will never make you doubt your light. And if someone keeps dimming it, you don't owe them more time to come around. You owe yourself the freedom to walk toward people who see you the first time. Harper reached out one last time, months later. No drama, just a text. You were right. I was never really ready for the kind of love you gave. I hope someone is. I didn't reply, because that chapter was already closed, and the version of me who would have needed that validation, he was long gone. So if you're still listening, maybe because the story echoed something in your own life, I will leave you with this. There's no satisfaction like becoming the person they said you never would, but the real victory is becoming someone you're proud of, whether they're watching or not. You don't have to destroy someone to move on. You just have to stop shrinking for them, stand tall, walk away, not to hurt them, but to honor yourself. Have you ever walked away from someone who didn't see your worth? Drop your story in the comments. You never know who you'll help. And if this story spoke to you, subscribe to Ethan's Way, because your pain isn't just yours. It deserves to be told, and it deserves to heal.